Hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is Ginger Miller. Today's webcast, Insufficient Progress or Pattern of Strength and Weakness option, is sponsored by the Effective Evaluation Resource Center, which is part of the Indiana Resource Network. Today's presentation includes an overview of the option between insufficient progress and pattern of strength and weakness and the eligibility determination of specific learning disability. We will also be sharing available resources and professional development opportunities to learn more about SLD evaluation requirements and eligibility criteria. Today's presenter is Dr. Leah Nellis, the Director of the Effective Evaluation Resource Center. Welcome, Leah.
Thank you, Ginger. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the option between using a pattern of strengths and weakness or insufficient progress approach in the evaluation and eligibility determination of a specific learning disability. The information that I am sharing comes from a recent document that the EERC developed, and it is available on the EERC website. Article 7 speaks about eligibility criteria for SLD, and it outlines 2 inclusionary criteria, 2 exclusionary criteria, and then 1 general eligibility criteria that applies to all eligibility categories. All 5 of those then are determined or are considered necessary for eligibility determination. Just another look at those 5 eligibility criteria outlines the 2 inclusionary elements, the 2 exclusionary, and then the 5th criteria related to adverse effects. During this webcast today, I'm going to talk primarily about the SLD Indicator criteria, in which there is an option that allows the use of either a pattern of strength and weakness, or PSW approach, or an insufficient progress approach. These 2 approaches are listed as options in Article 7, and the decision about which approach can be used is best made at the individual student level. That is because for some students, there is sufficient information and evidence coming from an intervention and progress monitoring period in order to be able to use this particular approach. However, in other situations, that information may be insufficient or simply non-existent. So because of that then, multidisciplinary teams are able to make the decision at the time of a referral as to which of these approaches may be most appropriate related to this particular eligibility criteria. It is important to remember that the SLD Indicator criteria is just one of 5 necessary for SLD determination. However, when the multidisciplinary team is considering which of these 2 approaches is most appropriate, that can be done prior to the preparation of the written notice and during the stage when the evaluation is being planned. That way the evaluation can be designed so that it's most appropriate for the individual student and makes the most efficient use of the time for both the student involved in the evaluation and the staff conducting the evaluation. The context for these particular options in Article 7 really comes from the options that were included in IDA 2006. That legislation allowed states multiple options related to SLD identification. IDA 2006 required that states must permit the use of a response to intervention process, and it also allowed states to permit the use of alternative research-based procedures for SLD identification. So Article 7 accordingly permitted the use of both of those options, and in Article 7, the alternative research-based method was referred to as a pattern of strength and weakness. Just as a comparison to what other states have done regarding these options, you can see that approximately 40% of the states also permitted the use of alternative research-based methods, which are sometimes referred to as third option approaches. thinking about which of these approaches may be most appropriate, the considerations document has provided some thoughts or some considerations that might help teams decide which of these approaches might be most appropriate. In terms of the insufficient progress, you'll see that there are 5 pieces of information that are referred to. One is the written notice of intervention, which is a requirement under Article 7, and it is something that is supposed to be completed and provided to the parent at the time of interventions being provided. And Article 7 is very specific about the components or the content of that particular written notice. It's also important to consider whether or not the interventions that were provided align to the student's specific needs and the areas of SLD that are being considered. In addition, having evidence or data about the actual implementation of the interventions is important to ensure that they were implemented as designed and as intended. The next consideration related to insufficient progress is that there is technically adequate and sufficient student progress monitoring data, so that information can be used to evaluate whether or not the referred student's progress or rate of improvement is similar to or significantly different from the progress that is seen or expected of his or her peers. Switching then to the considerations related to patterns of strengths and weakness, it is important that the multidisciplinary team and the case conference committee is looking for a pattern that is considered relevant to the identification of a specific learning disability, meaning that the pattern is specific to the academic areas of difficulty that the individual student is experiencing, and that the academic difficulties are consistent with the other weaknesses that the student demonstrates. This pattern can be seen in performance, academic achievement, relative to state, age, grade level standards, and/or intellectual development. It is also important when considering the model that will be used to operationalize or be used to inform the pattern and strengths and weakness approach, that there be a research base or an empirical base to that particular model. That is important because of the linkage back to Article 7 in IDA 2006 that permits this option as an alternative research-based method. Choosing between an insufficient progress or a pattern of strengths and weakness option at the individual student level is important, and really is based on the fact that the PSW option is there when it is needed, and that may be due to the fact that there has been limited intervention services provided to the student simply because of their grade level or their area of academic concern. Intervention services currently are much better developed in the areas of reading and at the younger elementary grade levels than they are in other academic areas and at the higher grades. Sometimes there is limited intervention implementation data and/or limited student progress monitoring data. In those situations, the multidisciplinary team may make the decision that a pattern of strengths and weakness option is most appropriate for the individual student. It is, however, important to remember that the availability of the PSW option does not minimize or deny the importance of high quality and explicit instruction and intervention for students with learning difficulties. And if the information, the necessary information for using an insufficient progress approach or option is available for an individual student, the multidisciplinary team may certainly choose that that is the most appropriate course of action. There are a number of third option or alternative research-based methods for identifying patterns of strengths and weaknesses in the research literature. You'll see 4 listed here as examples of the methods that are available in the literature. You will also see additional resources that may be helpful as you explore these particular methods and identify which one may be most appropriate for use at the local level. The EERC website contains a number of written resources related to SLD identification. There are also specific to this particular topic of insufficient progress or pattern of strengths and weakness. There are some handouts and some materials from previous presentations at conferences that you may find helpful. There is also a discussion board with the current forum around SLD practice and procedures. There are recorded webcasts and upcoming information about live webinars as well as archived recordings from prior webinars.
Thank you, Leah, for discussing the option between insufficient progress and pattern of strength and weakness and eligibility determination of specific learning disability. This webcast can be accessed on the Effective Evaluation Resource Center website, along with many other online resources. Be sure to join the EERC discussion board, and if you have any questions about today's presentation, please email Dr. Leah Nellis. Thank you so much for viewing our webcast.